I really believe on cross training. I really believe that if you don't allow your students to cross train in another dojos, it's because you are hiding something. If you practice in a place that they doesn't allow you to visit your friends or to visit other dojos, that for me it's a bad sign.
Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Mayn Idea Podcast, where today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Fernando Di Piero, otherwise known as Soluço. If you want to see this show grow in 2024 and continue to hear from more incredible guests, please take 30 seconds and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It's super simple to do, and it helps tremendously with organic show growth and show placement. The other way that you can support this show is by simply sharing it with a friend who loves jiu-jitsu, strength and conditioning, and human performance. Soluço is a jiu-jitsu black belt and prominent figure in Ecuadorian Jiu Jitsu. He has helped foster the growth of incredible practitioners such as Francisco Sinistro Iturralde, Johnny Tama, and UFC legend Chito Vera. To support this show, please check out the sponsors in the show notes. And as always, I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Without further ado, Fernando Di Piero. Well, Fernando, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. Sinistro and Johnny and everyone have had such good things to say about you, so I've been really looking forward to getting you on here, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's a pleasure for me. And yeah, those are my kids. I'm really proud about them.
Yeah, they are fantastic people and amazing to train with. They bring a great level of intensity, but they're also extremely knowledgeable when it comes to the technical side of it. So they're very good people. I'm curious if we look to, I'd love to talk with you about lineage in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And if you look at your lineage specifically, coming from Helio to Holes to Omero Cavalcanti to Fabio Gurgel and then to you, that's a fantastic group of people, including yourself. And this is something in jiu-jitsu, I think, when people start, that is really appealing. As jiu-jitsu gets older and older and older, and more people get involved, I feel like it's harder for people to respect lineage and learning from kind of a bloodline of the right people and learning what's been passed down over and over and over generations. So I'm curious, from your perspective, from your history of training jiu-jitsu, teaching jiu-jitsu, and helping people develop as practitioners, how should we think about lineage? Is this something that's important?
Oh, I really believe it's important. So I'm really proud to be a black belt under Master Fabio Gurgel. And I always say that I'm building or growing over the shoulder of giants. So Fabio was an amazing coach. I'm really close to Master Jacaré, the Alliance founder, and I have a great. They have always talk great things about Master Rolls Grace, which is a huge legend. I also believe if we are talking about lineage, I should put Rolls and Carson as part of my lineage, and then go to the Helio and Carlos. So I believe all those BJJ professors are able to build and to change BJJ in some way, and they gave me what I try to teach for my students.
Can you take me back to your kind of early days in jiu-jitsu? So if think about you at 17 years old, you make a change in schools. And this is something that I think people do all the time now, right? Someone will just move and they change schools, or maybe like myself, I'll train at my school, or then I'll go train with Francisco. And so you see that more now. But back then, that's a bigger deal. That has a lot more weight. So what was your decision to leave and go start training with Fabio right when you were about a blue belt?
Oh, I started BJJ when I was 13 years old. It's exactly 1993, the year that Royce Gracie won the very first UFC. So I
Wow.
was a judo fighter back in the days, and when I saw the very first UFC, I get engaged, and I was looking for a BJJ school, and I found a school close to my neighborhood back in the days in São Paulo, and start to practice under the master Roberto Lage. But the São Paulo schools, the São Paulo lineage, it was not so good as, or not so modern as the schools who comes from Rio. So I was able to see the BJJ growing in São Paulo. And back in the days, the big schools in São Paulo was Godoy Macaco, the Gracie São Paulo under Ryan Gracie, and Alliance under Fábio Gurgel. And when I finished the high school and decided to go to sports college, I decided to practice as pro as I can. And then I decided to move to Fábio Gurgel's gym because he had a very, uh, it was a very friendly gym, like back in the days, the Gracie São Paulo, Ryan Gracie was kind of a crazy guy, I respected him a lot, especially his students. But I think that back in that time, like my mom would not let me practice with the Gracie São Paulo guys. They are
Yeah.
always involved on the street fighters and everything. And so Fabio was like a more friendly place to go. And I was very lucky because when I started to practice with Fabio as a 17 years old purple belt, Fabio was a black belt world champion. Leo Vieira just get his black belt. Um, Fernando Terere was a purple belt with me.
Wow.
Damien Maia, Eduardo Teles, they are blue belts. Tarsis Humphreys was on kids class. So I noticed since the very first day that I was in the right place and in the right moment, be able to share with all those legends.
Can you describe to me the energy in an academy like that? I mean, that sounds incredible for someone like me who finds this later in life, who's been obsessed with martial arts my whole life, but never had the ability to train them. To be on the mats with the all-star cast of people that you just said, that seems incredible. I mean, these are foundational members in modern jiu-jitsu. So what was it like in the academy?
Oh, it was great. It was a great time. In the beginning, I came from a small school. I was a purple belt, but maybe I was not even in the blue belt levels like Damien was blue belt at the time. So I
Yeah.
was trying to do my best, be the first one to arrive, the last one to leave, and compete and support my teammates in all the tournaments to get the respect from them. And
Yeah.
I remember in the very first tournament, I was able to beat a guy who left Alliance, a Creonte guy. And I believe that moment make myself closer to my new training partners. I believe it was an
Mhm.
important moment for me, for myself.
So what do you think the perception was in the eyes of Fabio at that point? 'Cause that's, again, to paint the picture of the timeline, that's a big deal, right? This guy leaves Alliance, goes to another school, and then his current student is, you guys are against each other in a match. Is there a lot of pride and worth in a match like that?
Oh, for sure, for sure. As I told you before, I was a judo fighter, and I
Mhm.
got a lot of experience in judo. So maybe I was not so good as Fabio's students on the time, but I was very strong on tournaments and competition. So I was trying um, to show that, for my training partners. That man, I can be a champion, and if I can improve my technical level, practice with a better coach, with better partners, I can go. I can, keep getting better. So, and back on the days, those teams changed by the teams or fight against a guy who was your rival. It was very, very personal. Like
Yeah.
it's not like nowadays. On that time, it was kind of different.
What was the camaraderie of you and your teammates like when you're outside of the academy? If I can picture Sao Paulo in that time, there's
Oh,
several top schools, right? Big schools, and tons of people practicing jiu-jitsu from very young ages like yourself. Is there like a, I don't know what the right word would be, but are you kind of measuring yourselves against each other all the time as you're walking the streets at night? If you're at a bar, is that
Oh,
different mentality?
not too many. Like I had a very good relationship with my team partners.
Mhm.
Um, like Eduardo Teles, Demian Maia, those are my best friends in life. So, but somehow we don't used to share the mats with guys from another teams. And back
Mhm.
in the days, also I was fighting judo and BJJ for my college, and I was practicing under Professor Marcos Barbosa, and I was sharing the dojo with guys from Gracie Barra, Godoy Macaco, Yamazaki School,
Mm.
like Murilo Santana or Fabio Leopoldo. And that was pretty new on the time, like also people from the dojo that doesn't like too much that we are able to practice together and to share some techniques together. But I think that was great too, to be able to practice under Marcos Barbosa and got the
Yes.
opportunity to share with guys from different schools in São Paulo, and I always try to be a good teammate. So I had a very good relationship with those guys too, especially with Murilo, with Master Barbosa, and all those guys.
What are your thoughts on cross training now, today? Is that something
Oh,
that students should be doing? Do you advise that, or should they keep it close to their academy and just get better with those who are on the mats with them every
oh,
day?
I really believe in cross training. I really believe that if you don't allow your students to cross train in another dojos, it's because you are hiding something.
Mm.
So I believe if BJJ always grow up when we mix it. So
Yeah.
always when we exchange techniques or we exchange training partners, that's something very important. So if you practice in a place that they doesn't allow you to visit your friends or to visit other dojos, that for me it's a bad sign.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's so much value in it. You learn, you're exposed to, for example, when I go train with Sinistro, I'm exposed to a completely different pace, a completely different style, and then new people. And when you're training with people you don't train with all the time, even
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you respect each other, it heightens the level just a little bit. And I think that's really good to feel that exposure.
and different schools have different styles. Like I believe jiu-jitsu is kind of a language, and if you see different
Yes.
schools, they have different accents. So
Hmm.
if you're gonna fight against a guy from GF team, probably they will have a good judo and a good wrestling, and then we will fight some guy from Novo Union who probably will play some good half guard. So also when I was competing in Europe, like I cannot speak. I don't know exactly the language what they speak in Finland, but as BJJ in Finland grow up under Alliance School, I really understand their accent on their BJJ. Like they practice the same BJJ as I do.
Hmm.
So I really believe that we should be able to cross training with different gyms. I also really believe that we should cross training. I'm still playing judo. I always had a wrestling coach on my dojo. So I believe that we should be open mind and try to learn from different sources.
So with your history in judo, when you made what was it about jujitsu that took center stage for you and commanded more of your attention and focus, as opposed to staying on the track with judo and trying to make something out of that?
Well, when I was living in Brazil, I was trying to do judo and BJJ like fathers who doesn't want to love one kid more than other. I was trying to practice judo every
Yeah.
day, BJJ every day, and conditioning every day. Oh, since I moved to Ecuador, I'm teach a lot of judo on my BJJ classes, but I'm not competing or really teaching judo so often. Sometimes I go to practice with the local national team, but also, as I told you, they had a very different judo. Like I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. We have a lot of uh, Japanese migrants, so we had a very traditional judo. And here in Ecuador, the judo was growing up. They had a very good national team, but they kind of practice under Cuban instructors. So it's a very different judo. It's almost a different martial art for me, you know.
How is it different from what you practiced before? Like, what are their adjustments that they're making in their approach to throws and interactions and hand fighting?
Oh, for example, I grew up practicing judo in a very Japanese school. Like I was the gaijin, like the no Japanese
Yeah.
guy, you know. And you were
Yeah.
looking for like the classic foot sweeps and seoinagis, and also before the double leg or the kataguruma takedowns was forbidden. Those are kind of dirt techniques in the Japanese point of view, you know. So
Yeah.
I was trying to do a very traditional judo, especially with foot sweeps and hip throws and everything, you know.
So I've always found it interesting having done, I've brought this up in other podcasts with people, but I've been doing jujitsu since like 2019, and I absolutely love it. And one thing that has come to my attention from competing and training with partners in the academy is that, you start on your feet when you compete every single time. But so much time is spent in the academy never starting on your feet. So it's this
Yeah,
huge part of the sport that's so important. And
and you
from a
know,
self-defense perspective, if I'm on the street and someone gets in my face, we're not going to sit down on our butts to figure it out,
yeah,
right? It's all going to
I,
start here. So how do you
I
approach that?
completely agree. Like,
Yeah.
man, if you, I hope you will be able to notice. Like, Sinistro is a guard puller, and a lot of Ecuadorians they do guard. But
Mhm.
in Ecuador, as I was the pioneer in BJJ in Ecuador, we used to start every row stand up. And that's my point
Yeah.
of view. You know, if you don't want to fight stand up, you must learn to pull guard. You know,
Mhm.
so I hope that in the Ecuadorian BJJ schools, that every school starts standing up. And I hope that the Ecuadorians are able to have a better stand up game than the regular BJJ schools who start all the rows on their knees. So
Right.
I'm really trying to practice takedowns at least once a week, and like I try to teach some judo or I try to teach some wrestling takedowns. And I really believe that's a very important aspect of the game that people sometimes don't care as much. So um, if you come to Ecuador, or I hope Sinistro and the Equatorian guys is still doing that. You know, like every single row starts on stand up. You know, I think that's important.
I can vouch for Sinistro implementing these, especially when he's in preparation for like an ADCC event or something. He's for those that are willing. I think there's a safety element there too, with some people don't feel comfortable because of their new skill level, but for those that are willing, he does, and it's so cool to watch him train because he'll bring in collegiate wrestlers and train with them, and he's got no ego about it. He's just there to improve and get better, and his students to get better, and it's really cool to watch. I was speaking with JT Torres a couple of weeks ago, and they hired at Essential, they brought in a full-time wrestling coach. And I thought this was really interesting to meld these two together. When you look at the structure of an academy, do you feel like we are moving towards a place where wrestling and judo and jujitsu are really taught as a unified curriculum, or are we still a ways off from
Oh,
that?
yes, kind of. Like nowadays, like those NoGi tournaments and ADCC, they become very popular. And I believe that if you want to be a champion on that tournaments, you must be good on BJJ and wrestling. So
Right.
that's the view that I'm trying to bring to my students, you know. So
Mhm.
I always had a wrestling coach at the gym. I tried to be like the judo coach also in my school. And I really believe that we should mix that to create like world class competitors.
Yeah, it's so important, and especially as someone who, I haven't been doing this since I was 9. I spent so much of my life doing other sports. when you step into it for the first time, it's a tough skill to learn. There's a lot of trial by fire, and you make horrible errors. So having someone there to teach you that kind of stuff, it's so good. It's so important because it's going to happen. I mean, at some point, either someone's going to stand up with you or you're going to start standing up. And so understanding the mechanics of that movement and pressure and everything, I feel like it's invaluable. I'm excited to hear that that's something that, you know, in your position with Alliance, like you're thinking about and the growth of it.
Yes, I'm always doing that. Like I have now I'm working with a very good generation of Ecuadorians. They
Uh-huh.
are from 13 to 17 years old, and I have a very good kid called Alex. And he's a card puller, he's a berimbolo guy, and he hates when it's like takedowns day, like when
Yeah.
you do like specific takedowns and everything. And I always telling him that, man, one day we'll be a world champion and we will score a takedown at the end of the fight, and you will say thank you to Professor Soluço
Yeah.
for these lessons. Also, a lot of times when you are doing guard, especially no-gi, to go for
Mhm.
a sweep, you need to wrestle up.
Right.
So I really believe that you must be able to be comfortable fighting on top, on bottle, on takedowns. I believe that a BJJ fighter must be able to fight with gi, without the gi. I try to have
Yeah.
that bigger vision about the martial art.
So I'm glad you brought this up, the gi and no gi thing. So kind of returning back to this idea of lineage and looking at the pedigree that you come from, how much time you've competed in the gi, but also to be respected. You had a mixed martial arts career. You've also competed in no gi. You're very well versed in everything that is martial arts. You know, you're not isolated to just this thing, but you're a well decorated gi fighter. And I personally am just drawn towards. I like them both, but there's something about the gi that is special. Maybe it is like the philosophy of it and the martial artsness of it, but I love it. I love to train them both interchangeably together, right? Gi and no gi. But what is it to you that is special about the gi? What makes gi jujitsu a unique thing?
So I start as a judo fighter, so I feel more comfortable using the gi for takedowns. I get good results as a competitor without the gi too, but I really believe that the gi is very important, especially to learn BJJ. Like,
Mm-hmm.
look that if you saw, like maybe also nowadays, if you check the ADCC champions, almost all of them they still practice with the gi and they learn with the gi. So it's like I'm a Formula One fan. Like Brazilians love Formula One, and like
Mm-hmm.
do no gi, it's like pilot a car in a rain. It would be
Right.
easier to you to learn how to drive a car like in a dry circuit. So
Right.
I really believe that the gi is more technical and the gi will help you to learn and understand BJJ. But also I believe that practice no gi is very important. It's easier to understand the escapes and it will make the rolls faster. And
Mm-hmm.
nowadays people are switching from position to position and in a very smooth and fast way. Like back in the days, the fight was slower. So
Mm-hmm.
I was watching one of the Rutolo brothers fight in in these fights on one in Southern Asia like a couple of weeks ago,
Oh, in
and this
Singapore. Yeah,
guy
yeah.
is switching from position to position. Yeah. This guy switching position to position in a very fast way. Like if you saw nowadays those modern kids, those all
Right.
those Mika, Rutolos, or also Roberto Jimenez, they are fighting in a different speed. And
Yeah.
Nogis helps a lot with that.
Yeah, there seems to be this silly argument that that gi training is useless and no gi is the only thing that matters because I think these people think that everyone just walks around in leggings all the time, which is not the case. Like they both have such good application. I mean, from a self-defense perspective, but also I think they're good ways of regulating your training. The no gi is it's going to be a faster exchange. slipperier. You're going to use grips and control different. Training in the gi is a good way to offset that. And it from a grip strength perspective, even though it's not specific to the lapel itself or the sleeve itself, you're building your strength and your endurance, and they complement each other no matter what you're doing. And there's top level competitors that compete in the gi or train in the gi all the way up to when they compete, in the no-gi tournaments.
Yeah, I grew up with Marcelo Garcia, and Marcelo practices gi every day. I was back in the days. I was telling Marcelo that he should take the gi out for prepare for his ADCC tournaments, but he was like a gi fighter, And in my opinion, he is probably the greatest of all times fighting without the gi. So I really believe that the gi is really, really important. And also, I believe that we should be able to practice both because BJJ black belt should be able to practice in those different styles.
So I listened to Chito Vera was on Joe Rogan, and for a little bit, Chito was speaking about training with you growing up and had the impact that you had on his career. And Joe asked him, why did Fernando go to Ecuador? And Chito said, I have no idea. So I wanted to ask you, why did you leave Brazil? Why did you go to Ecuador originally and then really root down there and go on to produce top level competitors and have this beautiful role in Ecuadorian Jiu Jitsu and also mixed martial arts?
Oh, it's almost an accident. So I was unhappy in Brazil back in the days, like my father just passed away, and I have like uh, some troubles with my family, and so I was competing in the EBJJF tournaments, so traveling to US to Pan Am, traveling to Europe for the European Championship, and I tried to spend as much time I could outside of Brazil. And then I also speak Spanish since I was a kid because I have family in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And when I saw BJJ coming from Rio to Sao Paulo, and then later I start to saw BJJ growing from Brazil to US to Europe, and I saw the very first professors in Latin America, like Freddy Sucata in Argentina, Francisco Salvador in Venezuela, and I noticed that there was like a new market. Like Brazilian doesn't want to move to Latin American countries because they are looking for maybe California or Hawaii because there is like waves and money. But
Right.
first of all, I went to Ecuador to teach some seminars. So then they invited me to go there to teach 3 months. And then 3 months become 6 months. And then I start to believe that, especially the Itural brothers, that they got a great potential. So first I decided, oh, maybe I should stay in Ecuador longer and to be able to give the brown belt or maybe the black belt for Leo Iturralde. And then he maybe was able to teach Juan Miguel and Sinistro. But then also when I started teaching Ecuador, it was like Brazil in the 80s, people was challenging and knocking the gym to challenge BJJ. I was fighting MMA in scenario that doesn't look very common for the 2000s. Like I was really fighting to prove that BJJ was able to be different than martial arts, and that's made me a lot of enemies. So some people try to deport me from Ecuador. They try to take me out. So I stayed too for the ones who I love like the Trout brothers to support them. And I stayed in Ecuador to kick some asses, because some guys tried to deport me and street fight against me. And then 3 months become six. And then during the 6 months, my girlfriend on that time, she got pregnant. And all the time I was like living with my backpack, ID, and traveling all over the world, just making money to be able to compete. And then I was in deep troubles. It was not just me who was with short of money in Ecuador. It was me, nowadays my wife, and my daughter. So man, or BJJ in Ecuador will work, or there will be like three hungry people living there. So it was like that. And then always that happens this year again, and happens a lot of times. Sometimes I got friends who gave me an invitation. Oh man, maybe you can come to teach in US, or this year they invite me to teach in Kuwait. But
Yep.
I really love my job in Ecuador. I'm really in a position that I saw BJJ here growing up. I got the respect from the BJJ community. I'm in a position that I can organize the tournaments. So I really love my life here in Ecuador. I like what I do. I teach kids classes, I teach beginners classes, I teach competitor classes. That's what I like to do. It's kind of difficult if you compare to other countries, which is
Yeah.
easier to make money as a martial artist. So from
Mhm.
time to time, I'm struggling to pay the kids' school, or struggling with those, and I say, yeah, man, maybe I should pick another country. I'm sure that I will live in a bigger house and drive a better car.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy in Ecuador. Like I'm free, and I'm kind of crazy. I don't know. I don't really follow rules very well. So maybe if I was in US with some street fights, or
Yeah.
I will probably end up in the jail. I don't want to go to live in the Middle East and teach for I don't know, man, under army, to follow orders by someone. So here in
Yeah.
Ecuador, I do things by myself, and I feel really, really free. Like I really like my lifestyle here.
Well, happiness is subjective, right? Like your ability to be happy is dependent on you. And it's only comparison that makes people feel like they need more than they have. And if you're psyched and you live a good life and you get to take care of the people that you love and train, do you like why need that other stuff, right? You don't, because then you'd go get it and you'd be unhappy. You'd go travel somewhere else, you'd root up, you'd get a bigger house, a nicer car, and then you'd be pissed because you'd have to abide by all these rules that you hate,
Yeah,
you know?
I really know what I want. So, like couple of years ago on the pandemics, like the Equatorian BJJ Federation get in troubles, and then they vote for me as a president because they believe them. I can put all the community together and everything. And then I was trying to work as a president of the federation, doing papers and everything. And I was very unhappy. I don't wanna, I don't wanna do this kind of politics, and I don't wanna manage public money, as the federation get money from the sports ministers. And
Mhm.
then I gave up. I gave up the federation, and I'm really doing what I like to do. I
Yeah.
like to be on the mat, teaching and practicing, and I like to do that, and you know to have my simple life, to wake up in the morning, do the breakfast for me and my kids, go to the dojo, teach the classes, and be able to do that. That's what I believe that a BJJ coach or professor should do. If I don't have a dojo with the door opening for a white belt, and be able to make that white belt a black belt. It doesn't matter if he has a hobbyist, or if he's looking to be a UFC fighter, or
Mhm.
a BJJ black belt, a world class competitor. That's what I like to do. That's to be able to be there and teach them, and from the beginning up to the highest level.
You need to tell me the story about this guy who tried to deport you.
Oh man,
What
that's
was that
that's
about?
I can tell. That's a funny history. All the guys in Ecuador know that. Like when
Yeah.
I moved to Ecuador, I tried to organize a tournament, and on those days, purple belts, and there was like 5 or 6 purple belts in the whole country. I was the only black belt in the country. They never competed because purple belt it was like a coral belt. It's almost a red belt. They are
Yeah.
like the masters. So I organized a tournament. It was exactly the year that Carson Gracie died. So I called the tournament the Carson Gracie Cup. And I invited all the purple belts to go to the tournament. And some of those guys, they had their own gym. It looks like that was a samurai challenge. Like I went for the gym to invite it in for a life or death match. That was on their minds. And I say that to my students too. And I have like a couple of students, like when I get an invitation to stay 3 months in Ecuador, that was two different gyms that become one school together, and to be able to pay me to stay that time there, and it was not easy because they are from different schools, and they start to a rivalry between the students. So some blue belt under the Iturraldis will get like a break the arm of a blue belt from the Garcia coach, And then I made the tournament, and I put all my purple belts to this tournament to compete. And one of the guys, like the Garcia instructor, he went to the tournament as one of my students, and he lost. And he's like a guy who talks too much. He used to be like famous in the discos, like street fighters and everything. And he's supposed to be like the national champion because he never fought in Ecuador before. And then he lost. He lost for another of my students, another purple belt. And then he decided that he lost. It was my fault because he lost in front of the girls, in front of his family, and he left the gym and started to talk some bullshit about me and blah, blah, blah. And then I faced him in a seminar, and I got opportunity to hold with him, and I was beating him, I was just trying to show him how his level was low comparing to my level, and he tried to punch me, and then it started like a fight on the seminar, and the dad of this guy was like a very important military guy in the country. And then I was teaching. I got all my papers in Ecuador. Like, man, I don't need to fight like for a green card in Ecuador, like in US. I was legal in Ecuador. But then the militaries went to the dojo and get me
Noguera?
and put me in the jail. I took like 2 nights in the jail, and as I get almost deported because this guy was scared me, was scared because he was talking bullshit about me, and I was telling that, man, I will find you on the streets and I will punch you, I will choke you out. And then that was like Ecuador. It's a small country, man, 10 million inhabitants,
Yeah, yeah.
And then I had this guy had a very high level military dad trying to deport me. And I have some students trying to, hey man, don't deport this guy. And that is one of the reasons that I stay in Ecuador. Like, man, if they want to deport me, I want to stay, like, man,
Yeah.
I don't want to go
You're a
deported
rule
by
breaker.
Ecuador to Brazil. Yeah. And also they make some traps with me. One time when I left Ecuador, like the militaries on the immigration, they didn't stamp that I was leaving. And then when I come back to Ecuador, they didn't let me come in Ecuador. So I spent some time in Peru doing papers. I crossed the border with lawyers and everything to be able to be back in Ecuador. So it was crazy time, like doesn't sound real, those histories, because it's that happens in Brazil in the 70s or in the 80s. But
Right.
to make BJJ grew in Ecuador, I was like accepting challenges, and I also invade some gyms. People was telling bullshit on the internet, and man, like this exactly guy, that same guy, that guy that I got the trouble that he put me in jail.
Let's move you back just a little bit and to your left, just so you stay in the
Okay,
frame. But yeah, there you
okay.
go. But continue.
So this guy, he was doing his grand opening of his new gym,
The same
and then
guy
I
that tried to
decided to,
deport you?
yeah, yeah, and then I
Yeah.
decided to go there alone. If I go there with my students, it will be like group fight, and then I go there alone and say, hey man, you are not telling a lot of bullshit about me that you would like to fight me on the streets on MMA. Okay, man, I'm at your dojo, and I'm here. If you want to fight me, I'm good to go,
Yeah.
So back in the days, things are kind of crazy. Like nowadays, it's those histories doesn't happen anymore. There is no, it's nonsense. But
Right.
when I arrived in Ecuador, if I don't if I don't do that, if I don't accept that challenge, if I don't put myself on that situations, BJJ in Ecuador will not be which is now.
How do you think that affected your coaching style?
Oh, man, first of all, I love BJJ. And so I hope that my students had the same point of view, that same passion. So I really believe that I was able to teach them that passion. And also, more than a passion, I try to be very open-minded on that, you know. So I'm trying to bring that lessons for my students. So I believe that Equatorian BJJ, Equatorians are very, they are really in love with BJJ. And I was trying to give them goals. When I arrived in Ecuador, we didn't have any BJJF medal, less than that. We are looking for
Right.
the his first win in a BJJF tournament. So to get Johnny Tama as a black belt EBJJF world champion, we need first to get Sinistro as a blue belt world champion. Before that, we must be able to get our first BJJF medal, and also before that, we need to be able to win his first fight. So, like Equatorians, they used to travel to Brazil to buy the gis and to see how Brazilians was incredible. So one of my first things in Ecuador, it was change that mentality to make they
Yeah.
believe that, man, everybody have one neck, two arms, and two legs, and we are able to be in the high level, you know. So that's what I expected from my students, you know. That's what I expected from the BJJ in Ecuador. This love, this passion, to be open mind, to be hard work, and to believe, you know, like man, if you saw Chito on his last fights, he's not doing too much BJJ. I also had a conversation with him this week, and I
Mhm.
hope that he is looking for emphasis on his martial art MMA. I hope that he's bring more BJJ or cage fighting, not just kickboxing for his next fights, you know. But I really believe that my biggest part on his life is
Mhm.
to be able to make he believe, you know. He was like a 14, 15 years old guy from Ecuador. We have no UFC fighters. So to be able to dream together, to be
Right.
able to stay on this path and step by step be able to go to the major leagues like UFC and to be able to be a challenger for the belt. You know, that was amazing. You know, we come from nowhere. We are like
Yeah.
in a small gym, in a small dojo, without MMA history or tournaments. You know, so I really believe that will that make them believe that they are able to be world class fighters was important because that was my goal. You know, when I
Yeah.
moved to Ecuador, I was fighting all the EBJJF big tournaments. I was doing my best on the Worlds, Pan Ams, European Championships. I was doing MMA and looking to be like a champion and trying to go for the major leagues. So I tried to give them my goals and I try to make them believe. And I'm as a very, I believe that I'm very dedicated athlete, but I'm not a
Mhm.
talent athlete. Like I'm a very regular common person. And once they saw me like, and this guy is able to fight a world championship. This guy is able to get medals in the European and Pan Ams as a black belt, and he's practicing with us. And
Right.
he's
It's belief.
yeah, yeah,
Wait, can you take me back to the first day that you met Cheeto? He was such a young kid when you started training him.
yeah.
What did you
So
see? What did you see in him at that age?
man, he saw one of my fights in Guayaquil, and then he appeared at the dojo with some teenager friends. to start to practice. And he was like a fun kid, like he and Tama was from the same generation. Tama just posted 2 weeks ago. They're both fighting in the Guayaquil Open NoGi tournament, I believe, as a white belts.
Wow.
They had a rivalry between them back in the days. And man, he was like just a fun kid, a troublemaker as other kids, who come to the gym and practice and everything. I really
Yeah.
believe that what's make him um, more compromised with the sport is when his girlfriend get pregnant.
Mm.
So he was as another kids at the dojo. He was doing that to compete and also for fun, and and going to skate on the streets and go to nightclubs and everything. And but he was, how can I say? He had a very good mindset as a fighter. He really wants to be there. Like I remember maybe one of his very first fights. It was in Salinas on the beach in Ecuador, and he was one of the uh, first guys to go to the cage to compete. We were sharing the restrooms, and there is more experienced fighters on the restrooms. And he was the most calm. He was the one who desired more to be there.
Yeah.
So I think it's it. You know, he always got this mindset that I would like to be there. I would like to be on the stage. I would like to be a champion. And I believe that he became he put him in a more professional way since his girlfriend get pregnant, and he was a teenager on the time. I remember
Yeah.
my girlfriend get pregnant. I was 28, and I was in trouble. I was in trouble to pay the bills, to rent a place.
Yeah.
And I believe he was 18 or 17. So
Wow.
first of all, I gave him a job at the dojo. He was he was at the dojo, at the door and working for how can I say, a receptionist and in
Yep.
the front desk of the dojo, you know, for a couple of times, to make some money. And that was also a mistake because he was a terrible employer. He was like he doesn't want the job, he needs the money, but
No,
he
he wants to
doesn't
fight.
want. Yeah, he wants to fight. And I make that mistake, because he was putting his 100% to be a UFC fighter. And to try to help him, I say, hey man, maybe you need a job, you can go to the front desk and check if the guys are paid and the jobs, and he doesn't like this job at all,
Yeah.
He was a terrible receptionist.
When you watched the fight of, when he fought Sugar recently for the belt, I wanted him. I have no shame uh, favoritizing fighters. I wanted Chito to win so damn bad.
We can
I
hear.
wanted him to win
I
so
lost your
bad,
sign.
and I just felt
Reconnecting.
like he never got going, like until the later rounds you see him start to tee off a little bit and he lets go. As someone who's coached him for such a long time, someone who knows his jiu-jitsu ability, someone who knows his wrestling ability and his striking ability, what was it like watching that fight for you?
Oh man, that was a very emotional moment for me. I was in troubles to handle my emotions during the fight.
Hmm.
I really like the Parillo's job. Parillo was his head coach to be able to
Boxing,
put
yeah, yeah.
him to fight for a title shot. But I believe that he is able to mix that a little bit more. And it's my point of view. Who am I to talk about Guy Mendes? I'm a Guy Mendes fan. Like tell you the truth. I always watching Guy Mendes fights because I really like his style. I like his style more than Rafa Mendes. Like man, he was a skinny dude able to work on top and pass the guard and everything. But I believe that as he was not an MMA fighter, maybe
Hmm.
he doesn't have the authority to change the game plan. So Parillo was putting the fight on his eyes, and he's had a kickboxing eyes, you know. And he is incredible and amazing, like, man, he's a magician, you know. I'm really his fan, you know. But maybe if Chito had a BJJ for MMA fighter with him on
Mm.
his camp, on his corner, maybe they are able to put that strategy together, you know. So once again, who am I? I'm a Guy Mendes fan, you know, and I'm really happy about their team who is able to put Chito on that fight. I think that his plan is going to. Uh, he always starts slow, and I'm sure
Hmm.
that he was looking for third, fourth, or five rounds to be able to push O'Malley in the end of the fight. But O'Malley was able to catch him, you know, to touch him with some good punches, especially the knee in the round number two. So when Chito was pushing himself to looking for O'Malley, O'Malley still was able to touch him, and maybe he was already hurt. So it was not our day. But I'm really proud about him, man. This kid had a lion's heart,
Yeah,
and
totally.
you cannot imagine how Ecuadorians were excited about this fight. He is the
The
most
sound.
no, he's the most important sportsman in Ecuador nowadays. He's a hero, you know. He's
That's
a local
amazing.
hero, and I'm really proud about him. You know, I cannot be more proud about someone, and I always talk about that. You know, like uh, maybe I'm not a very good BJJ competitor. I believe that my students is better than me. You know, like I
Humble.
always make fun about that, and I'm not so good. I'm not so good. Probably I'm not so good as a BJJ fighter. I'm not so good as a coach. But my students, they are great coaches and great competitors, and I really realize my dreams through him, through them. You
Yeah.
know, so um, I get some important medals in the BJJF with and without the gi, but I never won a world championship, especially as a black belt. So Temo won that world championship, and I really felt that I'm a world championship with him. You know,
Yeah.
so I was able. I'm from a generation in Spanish Latin American countries who doesn't fault on UFC or bigger leagues. You know, there was very good guys back in the days fighting in Peru, Mexico, also in Ecuador, who probably were on the UFC level, but there is no guys from those countries in UFC when I was a pro. The only exception maybe what was my friend Tony De Souza, you know, who was one of my guides on MMA. But man, to be able to see one of my students fighting a title shot in UFC, man, that was a dream come true for me. And I really believe that he will be able to come back to practice, to improve, and keep fighting on UFC. I hope he will be able to get a title shot again. And if he isn't able to get a title shot again, you cannot imagine what this kid was able to do. You know, he come from nothing, from nowhere, to be
Yeah.
where he was now. You know, and a kid who start to fight to be able to pay a surgery for his daughter. Man, now he is living in a beautiful house in California. You know, he put some money on the bank. You know, he's enjoying his cars. You know, I know that he likes old cars and trucks. So I don't matter. I would like. I don't matter if he's a UFC champ or not. He's he's a champion on his life.
When you look at these fighters, so Chito Vera goes to the UFC, has just fought for a title. Johnny Thomas won a black belt world champion. So is Francisco. I don't know Leonardo, but I know that he's an accomplished grappler. You look at these four guys coming out of Ecuador and going on to accomplish great things in the sport of martial arts, and they all were coached by you. And then you look at Ecuador, there's only 10 million-ish people there at the time, right? This is a small number of people in a small
And
country going off
when
to
I
do great things. What's the secret sauce there? I mean, you've clearly had a huge
yeah,
impact on each of these competitors' lives.
some people didn't realize watches for me back in the days when I moved to Ecuador. Like, get some guy from the World Championship who was fighting for a World Championship medal in a black belt, put him in a plane, drop him in a country which there is 2 or 3 BJJ schools, which the
Hmm.
most graduated guy, it's a purple belt.
Right.
And tell this guy to organize tournament, to teach the rules, to teach how to conditioning, how to eat, and how to compete, to teach the mindset. So I cannot be more proud about the Equatorian BJJ. Like nowadays, there is a BJJ school every single block. Equatorians love BJJ. People
Yeah.
get crazy. I'm really in the teenagers and kids because I believe they are the future. I have a very good group of teenagers. I can tell you, in 3, 4, 5 years, people will notice a new group of Equatorians kicking asses in the black belt division.
Hmm.
I'm sure about it. So that is my biggest accomplishment in life.
Yeah.
I start a job in a small poor country, and BJJ here, man, gets huge, huge, huge. I really believe that people should scare us like they are scared about people from Dagestan in MMA, or they are scared about Cuban boxers, or I don't know,
Yeah.
uh, guys from Thailand in Muay Thai. Like, man, Equatorians love BJJ, and for one side, I get very happy about it. So, and the Chito fights now, and the new papers, they wrote a article about me and tell that, Chito started with Fernando Soluço, the guy who landed in Ecuador and make a revolution in the martial arts, and that's a great accomplishment for me. I get a I get a medal from the Ecuadorian Congress. I also get a
Wow.
medal from the governor in the Guayas state where I live and teach. So I cannot be a happiest guy than I am by that by get my job recognized by the people.
So I have a message here from Sinistro that he sent me a voice message. I'm going to play it to you via the microphone here, and then you can elaborate on it. But this was his request.
Him about stories when we were traveling through Ecuador by bus. We just have a backpack, a gi, and a bus ticket. And whenever we made it to the destination, we'll be able to score food and some money for the rest of the trip, and then kept traveling to train jiu-jitsu in remote places. Literally, the places we were visiting or the gyms we were visiting had a white belt as a teacher.
Can you elaborate a little bit on these bus excursions with the Iturralde
Because
brothers?
that's what I'm still doing. Like, man, back in the days, I was getting a bus, and man, you don't know about the bus. I'm not talking about American bus. I'm not talking about the American routes. I was going up and down at the Cordillera de los Andes and teaching in different cities. And most of that cities, the instructor was a white belt who had a class with me with a black belt once in a month you know.
Wow.
And I was traveling with Sinistro. A lot of times he was getting the bus with me because when I go there and I smash like white belts, guys from judo or karate, people doesn't believe too much in the martial arts because I was an athletic, big guy, heavy guy. And so Sinistro traveling with me, it was like, man, my secret weapon. I was visiting a city, teaching a class for just white belts.
Yeah.
And then I have like a 15 years old green belt who was able to submit all the guys in the classroom. Man, so this works. And I'm still doing that, man. Like, I'm traveling in Ecuador now. I'm in the Quito, in the capital. Yesterday, I teach a class in Ibarra, which is 3 hours far from here. But before Ibarra, which is up in the mountains, day before yesterday, I teach a class in Quevedo, which 10 hours from Ibarra. And man,
Jesus.
and Yeah. I wake up in Quevedo. I took a 10-hour bus. I arrived to teach a kids and adult class in Ibarra. And then I take a 3 hours bus and I'm in Quito. And today I'm resting in the morning because I have classes in the evening, and I'm still doing that. I'm still doing that after Sinistro. Another kids traveled with me. And people doesn't believe, people doesn't realize which is the reality in BJJ in Ecuador. And to tell you the truth, um, I'm doing that not for money. If I tell you how much they pay me to stay 10 hours in a bus to teach 2 classes in a city, man, almost 18 hours from my hometown. You will not believe in me. You will not believe in me. Like back in the days when Sinistro was telling you that histories, it was the same. It was the same. We are getting a bus, arrive in the city, teach a class, looking for some street food, a place to sleep, probably sleep on the mats. And from those schools are able to growing up. Though that school that probably Sinistro are talking about was Santo Domingo, that black belt was able to put some another black belts who teaching and sits around then. And man, nowadays I have more than 100 black belts that I gave in Ecuador and in different cities all over the country by that system. So I don't know if you get a map, but on last Friday I was in the Pacific.
I,
I
I'm
was
gonna
in
look.
Porto
I'm gonna
Viejo.
look on a map right now just to see
Yeah.
to get some
So
Equatorian geography.
So last Friday, I was in
Hmm.
Porto Viejo, which is in the north in the Pacific. And then
Okay.
Saturday, I organized a tournament in Manta, close to Porto Viejo. Then Monday, I was up to the mountains in the south, teaching in Cuenca. And then on Tuesday, I traveled from Cuenca to Quevedo. It's a 10 hours bus. And I teach
Yeah,
a
yeah,
class in Quevedo for some kids in a social project. And then on
yeah. I'm looking at
Wednesday,
all
I
this.
travel 12 hours to Ibarra on the mountains. I climbed the mountain again close to the Colombia to the north to teach another classes. So I'm still doing that. I'm still doing that. Like 1 month, 1 week every month. I will get a backpack. I will get my gear in my hands, and I will get a non-American bus fix on it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going in a regular route, man. I'm crossing routes that you can saw and don't look like the most dangerous roads in the
Yeah.
world. Like, man, crossing the Andes, crossing storms, to teach a class. And man, looking for a place to eat, looking for a place to sleep, and always looking for a laundry to wash the gear. And come on, let's go to the bus again. I'm still doing that. People cannot imagine that. I'm telling you the truth. If the BJJ community could understand that, they will not believe.
You're a crazy man.
Yeah, I'm in love.
You're
I'm in love
crazy, dude.
with BJJ. Yeah.
But you know what's special is it's interesting thinking about Ecuador as a country and how I mean this in the context of jiu-jitsu, how underdeveloped it is for martial arts. So if you're going to all these places, it's because they don't have access to top level instruction. So when you get there and you're teaching and you're going the north, the south, east, west, you're crossing mountains. That's kind of how jiu-jitsu grew in the first place, right? Is people are going to these great lengths to go and instruct at different places and basically kind of jokingly religious, like spread the word of jiu-jitsu, right? Is you're going and
It was
you're on mission for jiu-jitsu.
it was really that, man, a BJJ missionary, and I'm not doing that
Yeah.
for money. I'm
Yeah.
doing that for the growth of the sport.
So when you think about Ecuador and the people there, the martial artist community, and for example, Chito's fight, right? I mean, you kept hearing the announcers talk about how many people showed up for him, how many people from Ecuador, how much they were tuning in, and how much pride there was from this country for having their potential champion up in the octagon. There's a lot of pride there. There's a lot of fandom. There's a lot of excitement around martial arts. Where do you see the future for Ecuadorian Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Man, I really see a brilliant future because I believe I'm working in the third wave of the Ecuadorian competitors. So the very first wave, like Leo and Juan Miguel, the older Zituraldes, they are able to get their black belt read as a masters or in their late 20s. Sinistro maybe was the very first one which was able to get a black belt as in his early 20s, but he started to compete and practice as a 14, 15 years old kid, But nowadays, BJJ is so popular in Ecuador that there is like a new group of kids who are competing and practicing in high level since they are kids, So I believe that there is a great generation coming from Ecuador, and that they will be able to be recognized in the world class level.
So if you're walking down the street in Ecuador and someone pulls a knife on you, what should you do?
No, man, I'm really not a fan of self-defense against knife and guns.
Yeah, run.
I don't teach
run.
that. I don't teach that, Like some people believe, oh no, I believe BJJ is very good on self-defense because build your confidence and a lot of things will put you out of troubles, and also probably you will be able to solve a lot of troubles and some violent situations. But I don't try to teach kids to self-defense themselves against knives and guns. I don't believe it's real. Simply like that,
Yeah, that's it's very well said. Very well said. I heard that you were going to be in Southern California coming up in a few months. Yes.
Yeah. For some years, I didn't went to the World Championship in California, because it's always a lot of money to travel, and I was here building my team, So this year I will be able to go with probably 6-7 students on juvenile blue belt and some purple belts from that new generation that I hope in some years it will be a group of black belts. And my daughter it's her first year as juvenile blue belt. So I'm very excited to be able again to go to the World Championships with an Ecuadorian team from Alliance Ecuador. And I was talking with Sinistro to visit San Diego before the tournament and to talk with all the Ecuadorians down there. I call them the Ecuadorian embassy in San Diego. There is probably a dozen of Ecuadorians teaching and living in San Diego, and to make a seminar, the seminar, I will be very happy to see my kids, my students. I don't see a lot of them for a while. I will be happy to see the students under my students. And also, as I told you, it's not cheap to go to California to pay the plane and the tickets and the tournament. So it's a way that my students can help me and support me to be able to be there,
Well, if you come out here, I've had the pleasure of meeting and training with Sinistro and Tama and Juan Carlos, who I think is at Alliance over in Carlsbad now. They're such incredible people. They're such fantastic competitors, great training partners, good vibes all around. So if you're in town, I'll come be the gringo on the mat sitting in the corner there and get to learn from you. But
it would be great.
Fernando, it's been awesome getting to learn from you, and also just getting to hear the story of your impact on Ecuador and bringing jiu-jitsu to Central America. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and joining me for this conversation.
Thank you, my friend. It was a pleasure for me. Sorry about my English. It's not my native language, but
Todo bien.
I really enjoy the opportunity. Thank you, friend.
La próxima conversación estará en español. ¿Mejor?
Hecho, sí, más fácil. Me siento más cómodo.
Ok, nos vemos.
Un abrazo. Ciao, ciao.
Hey, friends, Abe here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and sticking around to the very end. If you want to support it, leave a 5-star review on Spotify or check out www.maynideapodcast.com. Join the mailing list and stay up to date on all things The Mayn Idea, from future guests, sponsorship opportunities, products that I'm using to help me perform at my best, invites to ask me anything, and any upcoming pertinent information to the show. I cannot do this show without you. It is literally why I show up each week and put these episodes together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart from being part of the community. I hope you have a great day.